ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm George Binns, and I'm here with lots of people. Gail Burke, Elliot Margolis, and Stuart Gardner. And we're going to do another of these 5-1 things. And this is going to be a little bit more spontaneous and unrehearsed as usual. Because you see right now, we got a banner up that says immigration. I don't think we're ever going to get to that. But Elliot wants to start with a little bit of the top of the page.
Yeah, I'm a little cranky.
Always.
I'm cranky with feel-good legislation. And that's what liberals are really big on, is feel-good legislation. For instance, if somebody is walking across the street, the car has to stop. And I do a lot of driving. So if I'm driving along and all of a sudden somebody's looking on their phone like this, walking across the street, no matter how fast I'm going or no matter how close I am to them, I have to stop. Or if I hit them, it's my fault. They don't care. And not only don't they care, but instead of when you're walking across the street and trying to get to the other side quickly so you don't get affected by the cars, they go so slow. You think a turtle is slow? Let me tell you, some of these people, particularly millennials, are slow. Feel-good legislation is not good for us. It's not good for the drivers. It's not good for the millennials. Someone's going to get killed, and it's going to be the driver's fault even though it's the guy walking across the street. Now, talking about feel-good legislation, let's talk about guns, gun control, because that was one of the subjects we wanted to talk about. In Chicago, I don't know how many dozen people got shot this past weekend.
28.
28 people. Okay, 28 people got shot. How many with legal guns? I'll bet you 0 with legal guns. What good is gun control or more gun laws when criminals don't care about the law? I open that up to whoever wants to
I'll
talk.
say something. I just want to say about your crosswalk thing.
Yeah.
Yes, it is your fault if you hit someone in the street, just so you know. There's no way you can legislate out of that way. And I don't see that as a liberal versus conservative issue. But
It's feel-good legislation.
I don't like slow people either. So, Mike, the whole Chicago gun thing with legal versus illegal guns, each state has different gun laws. So if Illinois can have the strongest, best, most annoying gun laws in the world, and if Michigan has crap gun laws, they drive over the border and do it. That's why there has to be uniform gun control, because you want the same laws. And I don't know which laws are better. I'm not saying that they're good or bad. I'm saying that if you've got, I know there's a big issue because Massachusetts has stricter gun laws than New Hampshire. And I know if you can't get a gun in Massachusetts, you can drive 20 minutes north and get a gun in New Hampshire.
That's phony. Right there. You can't do that.
I know the laws are different. The laws are different. If you
go to New Hampshire, you've got to get a license and a background check, just like you have to get in
So I'll let you
Massachusetts.
know that you guys like
the only way out of it, you got to show a New Hampshire license.
You guys like to bring up empirical evidence. There's a talk show radio person who's a reporter who said, I went up to New Hampshire, I went to a gun show, I showed him my mass license, and I bought a gun without any questions from a gun show in New Hampshire.
Did he buy it from a single person or from a dealer?
It was a gun show. I don't know.
Well, that makes the difference.
But you're telling me, but it couldn't happen in Massachusetts. So you hold on.
Yes,
you got irate at me and said that's not true. I'm telling you it is. I'm telling you that if she went to a gun show in Massachusetts, she couldn't have done that because they say you can't have it for 3 days or something like that. Or whatever gun laws are.
No, it's not the gun show. It's if you buy it from a licensed dealer or not. If you buy it from a licensed dealer, you got to go through the background check, 3 days, the usual rigmarole. If I buy a gun from you, it's just between you and me.
Well, then that shouldn't be legal.
That's part of the law that they're trying to pass right now. But that's the way it is right now.
So the laws are different in Massachusetts and in New Hampshire. You could. So hold on. You're saying that in Massachusetts, single-person gun sales don't need a background check either?
True.
I can sell you a gun.
Yes.
Personally. Well, that's wrong too. Then if
okay, that's
I can tell you, like, my son has a few guns. And he's living in Maryland now, and I have custody of those guns. I can go online, and I can switch the ownership of those guns with not just by going online and doing it. And that's Massachusetts.
Aren't you singing my song? This is for better gun control. And gun control is a dirty word, so maybe it's not gun control, but gun registration
See, the problem.
Already. When you move, say that you own guns in a certain city, say in Beverly,
right,
and you move somewhere else.
You got to tell the
You
police.
have to register with the police in that particular city all the guns you have.
Right.
And they check on you every 3 years. You have to renew that license.
But we just said that if George wants to sell me his gun in Massachusetts, if George wants to sell me his gun in New Hampshire, there is no intermediary. He can. And I can look at George. Now, George is a smart guy and probably wouldn't sell me a gun because he used to say, "You're crazy. I'm not going to give you a gun." But most people, if the price is right, would give me a gun. That's
but you
wrong.
You have to register that gun.
But if my intent is ill will, if my intent is malice,
well,
then
it doesn't matter.
But if there was a 24-hour background check, and now I'm not going to say everyone's going to get caught, but let's say 1 in 10 is stopped because the 1 in 10 has a criminal record.
You don't know that. You don't have those statistics.
George should go. If I go to George and I go, "George, I want this gun," he should be able to go to a database and go, "Stuart Gardner wants my gun." They send me an email. I got to fill out my name, my social, something like that. 24 hours later, the
George should have access to that kind of information.
No, George should say he wants to sell the gun.
Now let's get this thing straightened out. Legally, I cannot access the database.
I don't want you to.
No citizen can access the database.
I don't want you to. I said George should. George comes to me. I go to George. I go to George, and I go, "George, I want to buy the gun." He goes, "Great." He sends it. He goes up to the database, doesn't see it, and goes, "Stuart Gardner, what's your date of birth, Stuart? This date of birth wants to buy this." Then or his email, my email. Then they send me an email, and then I have to go to the website and fill out all my personal stuff. Then George gets the okay or not okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, here's the problem.
But that's gun control.
But here's the problem with
we may
gun
have
control.
laws like that.
Okay?
We have so many
Not
laws
yet.
on the books that aren't being enforced.
The problem with gun control right now and for the next 5 years is going to be that Trump is president. Now, you've got a Democratic Congress. So no matter what Trump wants, they're going to say no.
I don't know if that's true.
It is true.
And that's a problem. We can't get Congress to worry to deal with the fact that they represent the people and not their party. And that's both sides, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's one side or the other.
No, but we have
can't
to
get
have
Congress to do their job. They all have to be fired, and we need term limits. There's a lot of subject right there.
The facts in front of us. For instance, one person at least who's running for government.
Yes.
For president,
Yes.
Cory Booker,
Yes.
says, we have a mass shooting every day. That's not true.
Well,
that is not
it's probably
true.
not, but the definition...
No, you got to be careful on that.
The definition of mass shooting is different than just what we see.
He could not cite one real mass shooting that would have been stopped by any of the laws because there is not a mass shooting in the 21st century that these laws would have prevented.
Here's another thing. The Democrats are blaming Trump for the last 2 mass shootings in Dayton and in Texas.
Yeah.
So here's my question. Does that mean that the 32 mass shootings that happened under the Obama administration were Obama's fault?
I don't know. It depends on each one. So the one that happened
Of course it
hold on a
does.
second. Hold on. You brought up something. The one that happened in El Paso, Texas, it was definitely, according to the guy that did it, if you look at his background, if you look at the writings, was based upon his hatred of, or his disdain with people that he doesn't think belong in this country.
Yeah.
Right? We can agree on that?
Yeah.
There have been over 1,400, as a fact, you can look it up, over 1,400 references to invaders on Trump's, either on his texts, on his tweets, or on his ads by his people.
So that triggers that means that you believe that triggers somebody to go out and
I
shoot.
think if I take,
I don't think so.
I think if I take a mad dog and I make him really hungry and I make him really hungry and I push him around and I push him towards you, he's going to attack you. And then I say, I didn't know what he was going to do.
I have an
think
idea.
that's crap.
The person who did the mass shooting in Dayton said that he was a Elizabeth Warren supporter.
Yeah.
Why don't we just put her
So,
in jail,
but that's
too?
a different.
Let's put Liz Warren in jail.
Time out. That's a whole completely different story. He didn't target liberals. In fact, excuse me, he didn't target conservatives. That was a liberal enclave he went to. If he had targeted conservatives, if he had went to this show and took out you guys, right? You could have made the argument because he's a liberal guy going up to conservatives. He went to a liberal area in Ohio, in Dayton. It was a huge. They said it was. He went to a liberal enclave and started shooting people.
And guess who stopped him? It was a guy with a gun.
I get it. I'm okay with I'm okay with cops with guns. I like cops. I like cops. They call when I need them. They come when I need them. I love them.
Well, if the way things are going, they may not be able to. You may not be able to have a cop come when you needed them because the police are having trouble recruiting.
Yeah.
And look at the laws. They are preventing the police from doing their job.
They're looking for it.
Especially out in
I
California.
don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I know that what some communities have said is they feel like they are unfairly targeted by the police, and so the police are looking for individuals that don't exhibit those characteristics, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a cop being tough. I'm okay with a cop with being strong. I'm okay with a cop being fair. I'm not okay with a cop being a power-hungry racist. And if that's what they are, I don't want them in there.
Okay, but I don't want them anywhere. But let's
I
take
don't wanna live with
de
a
Blasio
power-hungry
is the guy that made sure that this cop in New York got fired.
Yeah.
And you know,
Eric Garner case.
Right, you got
Yeah.
a guy
was
who's at minimum 350 pounds.
The guy is 60 years old. They could barely move. Eric Garner was a big...
Why
But
is
he
running from
resisted
the
arrest.
police?
He resisted arrest.
He killed a guy for selling cigarettes.
He did.
But that's because of the laws, because of de Blasio. That's what happened in Ferguson with the Michael Brown. He had stolen cigarettes. He came out. He went over to the cop, and he tried to grab the cop's gun
I wasn't.
and kill him.
That's a different story. I didn't
No,
like Michael
it isn't.
Brown. No, I didn't
It's
like
the
Michael Brown at
same
all.
thing. It doesn't matter whether you liked him or didn't like him.
Michael Brown
And
was a
that's
bad
where
dude. This
hands
guy
up,
wasn't.
don't
This guy
shoot
was a
came
family
from.
guy. This guy, and I get it. You know, the Boston police are trying, and all the cops
They
now
were
are.
told to go after guys that were illegally selling
but they're learning
cigarettes.
de-escalation as opposed to violence. There are ways to de-escalate, and if cops do that first, and then they can't do it, I'm okay with them doing things. But to go in,
They
and
have to make
they killed
that
this guy.
judgment
They
every
killed the guy.
single day.
I get it. This guy wasn't going to hurt
What do you
anybody.
do when a guy
How do
resists
you know
arrest?
that?
Because he
You don't
sort of-
know
he could
that.
barely move.
Remember
They knew him. They said they
when
knew him.
Obama was first president and we had that situation in Cambridge with a guy trying to get into his house because he
Yeah.
didn't have his key.
The black Harvard professor.
Right,
Yeah.
and here's a cop
And the cops get it.
seeing a guy trying to break into a house, not knowing who he was. He said to him, "Let me show you my." He said, "Show me your ID," and the professor wouldn't show him the ID.
Yeah.
And Obama says the cops acted stupidly.
I think there should be set. I don't know if we do it rules and regulations or procedures or like just commonly accepted procedures that when a cop asks you questions, certain responses. When they stop you, your hand should be here. Why instead of people getting upset about how they're treated by the cops, there should be a certain way that you have to act when a cop approaches
Yeah,
you
but
with
you know
reason.
Agreed.
what's happening
And that
now?
means
But they can't.
respect.
The cops can't abuse that either, though.
No, but then you still have to
And there,
respect
and
the
there
police.
can't be a blue
There
wall of
is no-
silence for bad cops.
There is no respect for police anymore. Look at how they're throwing things at the police. The police are there to help you.
And that's
they're throwing
terrible.
water on them. They're
And that's
throwing
terrible.
buckets in. And these are kids.
That's terrible.
They
And-
have no respect
and the police
for
can't
the
do
police.
anything in New
Do you
York
notice
about
that
No, they
every
can't.
cop you see is in an armored vest?
Yes,
Yeah.
because they're afraid.
They've been in armored vests for quite a number of years. It's not something that happened yesterday. And how many cops have been assassinated?
I think
There
it's
is a
terrible.
running battle being caused by a negative stuff that calling them pigs, calling them all sorts of nasty names,
Disrespecting them.
and coming up with these cockamamie stories that, every time a cop does something, it's wrong.
I think that's crap, George. I
understand
I'm
it's crap.
I'm on the panel side on this one. But let me say one thing that when I met Ice-T. He's a rapper, right? And we had this long conversation, and it was about he came to my law school a long time ago, and it was about his song "Cop Killer," right? And it was like a big deal at the time. It was and he was saying that because it was a bunch of white kids that were listening to him from rich suburbs, right? And he's like, look. I understand everyone's pissed about this song, and I'll just give you one man's quick story. He said, you guys, cops are friendly, cops are fair, cops are nice, right? He said, where I grew up, it doesn't matter if you're doing the right thing or not doing the right thing. The cops come, they harass you, they beat you up. It's a different environment for them. And I'm not saying it is all the time, but for some people in some communities, it's a different environment with cops.
Yeah.
Boston's got a great history. I think Boston's doing really well if you look at the numbers in the past 20 years with cops.
They're still having trouble recruiting.
But some cities have, and maybe rightfully so, Maybe the Chicago cops are just fed up with the gang crimes and can't deal with it. But some cities have real trouble in their minority communities with cops. Now, I'm not saying it's all over the place. I'm just saying it's those communities. And if you were one of those people, you might not feel the same way that you feel now.
Well, all I would say to those people is, picture this. There are no police. Now what do you do?
It would be terrible.
Now what do you do?
It would be terrible.
Anyway.
I
And
agree with
it's the same part of the problem that, yeah, there needs to be a better community relationship between the police and those people that they're trying to protect. And that's something that's got to be worked on. And it can't be worked on by starting this stuff about, oh, it's always the cops are killing
agree
the black
100%.
guys.
Then you have to get
And if you look at the data,
to push that kind of thought, because they're not.
And when you look
They're
at Baltimore, you
absolutely not.
look at St. Louis, and you look at New York, it's the upper echelon, the mayor, who does not support the police.
He hates the police.
Totally unacceptable.
There might be other reasons. That might be union issues.
and the thing is, the other half of the thing is you look at the data, and more white people are killed by the cops in the line of duty than blacks. So that it's not a pernicious problem that they are targeting one particular minority group. It's whoever is living in the low-rent district. They are a problem.
I agree that it's more of a poverty issue, low rent issue, as opposed to a race issue.
Unfortunately, the low-rent district has always had gangs.
No, I agree.
So it's not something new. It's just something that people don't want to recognize that is the problem. We've got to do something about the gangs. And
I agree. I'm on the panel side.
Let's move to another
change the
subject.
Okay.
Yes. Let's talk about Israel. You wanted to talk
All
about
right,
Israel.
let's talk about Israel.
And what happened recently with
And the anti-Semitic
so-called-
liberals.
Yes, the anti-Semitic
The
liberals.
disloyal.
And
Disloyal
the
Jews.
congresswomen called the Squad, who are wreaking havoc all over the place. They're causing problems within the communities, they're causing problems within the state and the country. And now they caused a problem, two of them caused a problem with Israel. Because they supposedly wanted to go to Palestine, which is not even a state. And they did not want to be restricted by anything that Israel wanted to do. Israel said no, because you're not here with a delegation, you are traveling on your own, and you're not coming here to meet with any of the Israeli officials. So they got really steamed up. They went on the internet, they went on the news. Of course, the media loves it because now they can blame Trump for this. And they were calling Trump names and Netanyahu names and all of that stuff. Well, as it turns out, Netanyahu said, okay, we're going to change it. You can come and visit because you have a grandmother here. One of them had a grandmother. You can come and visit as long as you stay away from those activist groups and you meet with your grandmother. Well, they didn't know what to do. So they finally said, well, no, we're not going to go now. It was all a setup.
Well, as we were talking about this before,
It's a congresswoman in the United States Congress.
I told you, I was okay with Israel limiting the Congress people's visit. I was not okay with them denying the right to go there. At the beginning, I think Israel handled it wrong. They listened to Donald Trump. I don't like his comments about Jews that don't vote Republican. I think that's wrong.
Well, leave that aside. Leave that aside.
Okay, but I agree. I think there's an anti-Semitic element of what's going on there and I'll agree that the press doesn't report on enough because Israel's held to a higher standard.
But see, here's the thing. It's not only that Tlaib and Omar are anti-Semitic, because that's a given, but from my perspective, all liberals are anti-Semitic, and I'll tell you why. Okay?
Yep.
How many liberals came out and said they're wrong? Zero. Okay? But because David Duke decided he was going to vote for Donald Trump, all conservatives are white nationalists. Well, you can't have it both ways. So if I'm a white nationalist, you're anti-Semitic. And that's the way it has to be.
Well, so, Elliot, and I'm sure people have said this to you, but those are really blanket statements, okay? All liberals didn't support the Squad's issues with the...
No liberal came out and said, no, they're wrong.
I'm sure plenty of them did.
Where are they?
I got one right here. I don't think they're right.
Crickets.
One right here.
Yeah, but you're not in Congress.
But so So what they're, I don't know, right? But that doesn't mean, so comparing David Duke, and no one said all conservatives are white nationalists, and no one said all
I've
liberals
been
are.
called a white nationalist. I've been called a racist.
You're not in Congress either.
He's a member of the voting public.
He is a member of the voting public. I told you, we've had this show, we've talked about this show before, on the show before. The definition of racism is too broad, in my opinion, for a lot of people. It should be narrowed down. People use it nowadays. My own daughters, when they were younger, it was something they learned in school, and everything you did was racist. Anything they did, they didn't like.
I'm glad you said that. They learned it in school.
Well, they learned the term, but they didn't learn to define it
Well,
enough or
the
something
worst
like that.
part about it is, in the species Homo sapiens, there are no races.
I get it, George, but in
practice, we're talking
in
about...
practice, there are people that look each other, that treat each other different because they look different.
Yeah, that's adaptations to the environment.
Right.
But the other part of the game, the real issue is the cultural differences. And this is where the problem comes in, trying to assimilate into this country. That we don't have a universal culture that's the same all over, coast to coast, border to border.
I actually think there should be some sort of Americanizing training. Now, it shouldn't be indoctrination. I remember when I lived in Somerville, I first moved to Somerville, one of my neighbors was somewhere in Africa, and they used to throw trash out the second floor window. And I went to the landlady, and I'm like, someone's got to tell them. And, she went and talked to me. She came back to me. She said, that's just what they did when they lived wherever they were.
Yeah.
It was just you threw the trash out the window. I think there's got to be some sort of system to say, okay, welcome to America. Here's how we do the things.
How about starting with making English the national language?
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you have to speak English.
Well, your congressman, Seth Moulton, is not okay with it.
So,
and you want to get...
Unfortunately, he's our congressman, too.
You know what? Because you know what happens, Elliot? What happens, Elliot, is some lady speaking Spanish at a Burger King, and some other woman comes in and starts screaming at them and says, "Go home." You guys like to talk about the signal events, and they scream at these people about speak English and blah blah. I think in general, yes, English should be the language, but you're allowed to speak any language you want.
Yes, you
can. As long as you know how to speak English.
They should teach it from day one when those kids go to school. Never mind this immersion
I
on
agree.
this learning both languages. This is what we do here. We speak English. You're going to have to learn English.
I have no problem.
Before
with
you
speaking
go to
English.
school, you learn English.
Yeah.
Well,
Just like they do in Israel with the old power.
So it depends. I mean, you're talking about so you've got different people. You got people that are, born of immigrants here, or immigrants that come in with young children, or something like that. I mean, they should be immersed in English training.
Absolutely.
I agree. I think they should
That's
speak
correct.
English.
You know how
All right,
much
we
money
agree.
that would actually save this country?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we should learn the metric system.
I don't disagree with that.
I think the metric system is better than the English.
Well, it's more
English weight
exact,
system.
that's for sure.
It's better, but we're too.
They started to teach it years ago.
Yes,
and then
I think
they
we should learn the
stopped.
metric system. I think all Americans should learn to speak another second language, Spanish or French or Russian or whatever, or Chinese.
Yeah.
I'm all for that. I'm all for mandatory service in the military. Sorry, I know we're jumping around.
No, but that's okay. But that's an
It's valid, yeah.
I am for mandatory service to the country.
Yes.
Whether it's military,
Doesn't have to be military.
Vista,
Yeah.
Peace Corps,
Sure.
right after high school,
1 year
before you go to
And
college.
instead of 4 years of college, 3 years of college, and the first you don't have to take some away from the college system.
How about vocational school instead of college?
Love vocational
Yeah.
schools.
Okay, beef up the vocational
We've
schools.
just solved the world's
How
problems
about
right there.
charter schools?
We're,
So I don't-
we're working on you, and we're getting somewhere.
You guys harp
a while,
harp on charter schools. I forget if you like them or don't like them. But I'm for whatever.
don't happen up.
I'm for whatever educates the population better. If it's a vocational school, because a lot of kids aren't good at the traditional subjects,
That's right.
they need to work on engines. You know what? You know how hard, I told this before. You know how hard it is to find an electrician right now? They're
Absolutely.
even plumbers, electricians, because everyone wants to be a doctor and a lawyer.
No, everybody doesn't want it, but that's what the schools today push these kids into going to college. Everybody has to go
Well, it's
to
the
college.
parents.
And the parents.
It's the
too.
parents.
Yeah,
It's-
the parents. Too.
It's the parents.
But I mean, there has to be some way. For instance, Beverly used to have a trade school.
Right.
It's gone. The trade schools we have
Was
now.
it a public school?
It was,
Yeah.
It was in
part
the
of the high school.
Yeah.
And they got rid of it.
Yeah.
Did they get rid of it because of Essex Vogue? Or
No.
because
No,
just got rid of it
no,
because...
that was before that. But now the vocational school, they have waiting lists
Yeah.
because there are so many kids that want to get in.
I think I agree. More vocational schools are better.
Yeah.
They've got the equestrian there. You can do nursing. You can do
Plumbing,
Plumbing, you can do plumbing, electrical, you can do farming.
car mechanic.
I think we need more of it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Absolutely.
We're on the same page. This is too much. It's like
Wow.
it's the summertime. It must be the
This is
summertime.
wonderful.
We're all on the same
Okay.
You've
page.
been out in the sun too much.
We
Yeah.
got 3 minutes.
All right, so we got to
He's
disagree.
got
at the end.
nothing protecting his head.
Yeah. No, that,
3 minutes, so everybody can take. Not quite.
Don't start with-
okay.
Do the math.
Don't-
Take off your shoes and socks and figure it out. No, I
Do
think
the math, George.
the issue comes down to a lot of times that people have different opinions and they get locked into them, and there's no opportunity to, like this, to throw it back and forth in a congenial fashion that we're going to walk out of here and nobody's going to get punched in the nose because of anything they said.
Thank you.
I may or may not agree with you.
Gail's going to hit me.
Yeah, Gail will hit me later, but I think too much of this stuff,
I'm not a violent person.
and I've gotten it at the Y, which really irritated the hell out of me, that I'm one of those old white men that caused all the problems in the world, and people have this awful understanding of how we got here and why things happen, why we have a Second Amendment, why we have a Constitution, why we're not a democracy, and I'll get off my soapbox, but I think too many people don't understand the story of history. And
That's
it's only
the key right
the
there.
names and numbers that are totally irrelevant 5 years later.
That's absolutely the key is we're not teaching history in school, and that's a real problem. Because if you don't learn from the mistakes of history, you don't learn. Now, just as a for instance, one of the things that this country learned many moons ago was that slavery was not a good thing. And we freed the slaves, the Republicans, by the way. We freed the slaves.
Which they think is now the Democratic Party, just so you know.
No, not that one.
But what I'm saying is this country has evolved and keeps evolving into making things better than it was.
Yeah.
And we're the only country that evolves that way.
Okay.
And
I'll agree with both of you guys. I think discourse. I think it's. I also think that and this is more personally for you guys, not to take everything so personally. Someone calls you a racist, they don't know you. Someone calls you an angry white man who caused all the problems, they don't know you. I don't know what they call you, but I'm sure they call you names. But they don't. So if someone don't and this is and I agree with you. This is
No, it's not the problem that
Okay.
they're feeling
That's it.
damaged by this.
Sorry, George, we're going to cut you off.
But it's
It's my turn.
But it's the problem that when they call you that, they automatically start on a path.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
It's not the way it affects me, it's the way it affects them.
You
Okay.
think you get troubles at the Y. You should see what I put up with at Brooksby. But I think the key to it, and you're right, not to take it personally. Sometimes you just have to laugh at what they're saying because it's so dumb.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a great show, as usual. These are really fun. I enjoy these. We'll have to do it more often. And I hope that our viewing public feels the same way. We will have more in the future. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.